Are you just running laps? That's a good question. I was thinking about the January 18th London seminar that Dan Peña is doing, and he asked me if I would be the master of ceremonies for that, which I'm excited to do, and I'm honored to do that, and I take that seriously. So I am going to plan what to do, and I was thinking about that. I've got to figure out how I'm going to get there. I've got to figure out when I'm going to get there. In my case, I'm going to get there a couple days in advance. Why? Because stuff happens. Planes get canceled. Travel plans can be impacted by weather, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So prior planning prevents piss poor performance, and that's the reason that I'm getting there earlier. I've got to decide what I'm going to wear. If I want to get a new bespoke suit or shoes, that takes time. So I've got to plan that. Where am I going to stay? Who am I going to meet with when I'm there? And then most importantly, what are my duties as master of ceremony and how am I going to plan those and what am I going to do? So all of that takes planning and in advance planning. And I was thinking that that's very, very similar to QLA in general. Much the same. You have to go through a process, follow that process to get to the end result. Now, if you're interested in the January 18th seminar, I talked to Dan via email today. There are still seats available for that. So if that's something you would want to look into, just go to danpeña.com under his schedule and you'll see the one-day event. So that's that. But in terms of looking at QLA and thinking about that same process, you need to have a goal. You need to have a plan to achieve it. And you need to follow the QLA steps, certainly. And I think we all know that. I talk about that enough. Dan talks about that. We've talked about that you need to be passionate about what you're doing in the industry. You need to find something where you can be first. If you can't find first, better or different. And then you need to surround yourself with people who have been there and done that. That's the reason for a dream team, and that's the reason for your professionals and your accountants and lawyers. But then it's time to take action. And that's where a lot of people fall down. Is I would encourage you, as we've talked about, to use the self-journal, maybe use the Ivy Lee method, and every night write down for the next day the highest priority activities you have and do them first. So let's say you do all of that. You know what you're going to do. You've surrounded yourself with the right people. You're taking action in terms of writing down what it is you're going to accomplish the next day and over a longer period of time than that. But there's a really critical step, and that is to track your action and track your results even more so. And I always say to people, if you're going to use LinkedIn to build your board, your professionals, potentially acquisition targets, accountants and lawyers, there's only a few things you need to track. You need to track on a daily basis, the LinkedIn connection requests that you've sent, the LinkedIn connection requests that were accepted, and then how many interviews you've had with those people. If you track those three things, it'll tell you, is my profile connecting? Is my message connecting? And ultimately, when you talk to people, what progress am I making in building out the board and or the professionals and or deals? And many make the mistake of writing down things, but then they don't action them. And for me, one of the best ways to make sure I do that is to set a time and set a task and make sure that I accomplish it as I've written down. For instance, I have done an awful lot of calls and the business has gone well, so that at one point I was working 7 days a week, pretty much from early morning until late night. I made all of those calls, and the reason I made all of those calls is because I had them written in a calendar where I knew when I had to attend, I knew what I had to do, and I can't think of any that I missed as a result of that. So I wrote it down, I tracked it, I set a specific time for it. That's really important. And this applies to anything. If you want to talk about weight loss, for instance, and getting fit, what do? You decide on what you're going to eat and when, and you keep a food log so you know the activities. You probably develop a strength and cardio plan, and you schedule that on a certain calendar day and a certain time. And then guess what? Hopefully you track the results. One way is you step on a scale and you see, okay, what's my weight today, or what's my weight week by week, if that's the way you do it. So if you follow those steps, you have a goal, you have the right people around you, you have a plan of action, and you're taking action, and then you're tracking those results, I think you'll be very surprised at what you accomplish. And tracking your results is really critical. So that's what I have found most often is responsible for success. Maxime recently had a period of probably 6 months where he had not built a board, and within 2.5 weeks, he built a very good board. And I asked him, what are you doing differently in those 2.5 weeks? And he said, I was a madman on LinkedIn. I was sending all kinds of connections. I was talking to all kinds of people from early morning till late at night. And guess what? In 2.5 weeks, he accomplished more than he did in the past 6 months. So if you follow those steps, I think you will be pleased with the results. Okay, so if you have any questions or comments or ideas for future episodes, please email bruce@brucewhipple.com. And if you're not already on our mailing list, head over to brucewhipple.com and sign up and grab any of the free reports. That'll put you on the mailing list. There is a lot of free information you can use to acquire already profitable businesses. This is Bruce Whipple. Thanks for listening to the Business Acquisition Podcast. And remember, you miss 100% of the opportunities you fail to take. And procrastination truly is the thief of time. So do something today, please. Your future self will be proud of.